We have a full house. We have overflow rooms. We have a massive amount of media, both international and domestic. There must be a reason. I think he's sitting to my left, and he also passed the Wilson Center Rockstar test. People were lining up to say hello and get into the little photo op. What can I say? It's a pleasure, right after the new year, to welcome back Ambassador Michael Froman, the United States Trade Representative. Mike was here about a year ago. Come on, everyone, just sit down. Hi, Grace. How are you? Mike was here just over a year ago, making the case for the strategic importance of trade. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, aka TPP, wasn't on paper yet. And today it's a 5,000-page agreement that lays down rules of the road for more than a quarter of the world. The Wilson Center's deep bench of experts combed through those 30 chapters for a collection of essays that we're calling Wilson Perspectives. This is called shameless self-promotion. This is the Trans-Pacific Partnership Wilson Perspectives, and you can access it online, and we update it regularly. This is our kind of new way of publishing material from the folks here who understand all the regions of the world and how they intersect with this amazing document that Mike has produced. As I said, it's available online, and we will keep updating it with new insights as events develop. From Latin America to the Asia Pacific on issues from workers' rights to digital commerce, TPP, in my personal view, is the 21st century trade deal. Now the challenge is to sell it. And the fight in the U.S. Congress, for the moment, is uphill. I served in that place for 9 terms, and I was one of the rare species called a pro-trade Democrat. In fact, I looked it up, and the time we passed Trade Promotion Authority, which is the process Congress uses to approve trade deals, the last time we passed it before this past year, I was one of 20 Democrats out of about 200 to vote for it. It's not the easiest position to stake out, actually, in either party these days. But I do remember a time when members were able to get behind the benefits of trade on a much more bipartisan basis than they can today. That's too bad. And I personally think the case for TPP is clear. Economic partnership is at the heart of the American strategic advantage. And our rebalance to Asia, sometimes called our pivot to Asia, is based on stronger economic ties. TPP is a pitch to friends and allies, our vision for the world economy. And look how many have signed on, from Chile to Vietnam. Here to make the case in more detail, obviously, is our Wilson Center regular. We're going to give him a badge, Trade Representative Mike Froman. Before his appointment, Ambassador Froman served as the President's Deputy National Security Advisor for International Economic Affairs, and some time back served with our own Vice President for Programs. Where is Rob? Is Rob sitting here? Nope. But has worked with many of our staff some time back. He also served in many senior private sector roles. Unlike me, Mike has used his Harvard Law degree to build a serious career. But hey, there is life after Congress. Please join me in welcoming Mike Froman, who will make opening remarks, and then we'll do Q&A.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jane, and thank you for all that you do here at the Wilson Center. I have to say, we miss you in Congress, having that pro-trade perspective. Last night we heard quite a speech from President Obama. It's hard to be the follow-up act this morning. It was a speech that was infused with optimism, with a sense of possibility. He focused on the importance of not turning inward, not being scared about the future, about the importance of asking why not when it comes to taking on big issues. And I want to talk about one of those big issues today, and that's the Trans-Pacific Partnership. As Jane alluded to, the full text of the agreement has been out now for more than 2 months. And day after day, as Americans delve into its details, the momentum is building for its approval. Day after day, fresh facts are displacing stale fears. Facts like the fact that 95% of the world's customers live outside our borders, or that by 2030, the majority of middle-class consumers of the world will call the Asia-Pacific their home. The fact that TPP cuts more than 18,000 foreign taxes on made-in-America exports, making it easier for American workers and farmers and ranchers and businesses of all sizes to compete and win in the global economy. And the fact that TPP will support more high-paying jobs here at home, putting more money in the pockets of middle-class families. Day after day, the American people are stepping up and speaking in favor of leading on trade. We're hearing from American manufacturers and service providers and businesses of all sizes. Just in the last week or two, the Business Roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce, the National Association of Manufacturers, the National Small Business Association. We're hearing from American innovators, TechNet, the Business Software Alliance, the Semiconductor Association. We're hearing from American farmers and ranchers, the American Farm Bureau. Already, organizations representing thousands of businesses employing tens of millions of Americans have endorsed TPP. And we're also hearing from a wide range of stakeholders outside the business community who see TPP's high standards as an opportunity to drive global growth consistent with our interests and our values. Growth that doesn't sacrifice standards but raises them. Growth that doesn't abandon labor and environmental protections but gives them teeth. Growth that is not only stronger but sustainable and inclusive. And as we work with members of Congress and businesses and key stakeholders to ensure they know what's in the deal, how to address the challenges they care most about, and how it'll be implemented and enforced, we expect this diverse coalition to grow and strengthen. But given the work that this institution does, I want to focus on another group and what they've said about TPP. And this is a group that we don't normally associate with trade policy, but it's a group whose advice we turn to when the stakes couldn't be higher. And that's our national security leaders, our secretaries of states and defense, our national security advisors, our generals, our admirals, and others, who are all saying that TPP is a strategic imperative. They recognize that trade agreements, first and foremost, must stand on their economic merits. And they appreciate that the foundation of U.S. national security is a strong economy, and that by driving growth and keeping America competitive, TPP will strengthen that foundation. But they also appreciate that TPP is strategic in the broader sense of the word. TPP is the economic centerpiece of our rebalancing to Asia and a concrete manifestation of America's ability to show global leadership. Right now, this critical region is in flux. There are tensions over territory, volatility in markets, uncertainty about tomorrow's rules of the road. And in the past decade, hundreds of trade agreements have been negotiated in the Asia-Pacific alone. As the economic and strategic landscape of the region continues to evolve, our partners, our allies, have been blunt about the need for the stability and certainty that only U.S. leadership, engagement, and commitment can provide. Historically, China has been a dominant player in Asia, and it will clearly play a pivotal role going forward. All of the countries in the Asia-Pacific region, including the United States, need to have a positive and constructive relationship with China. Its peaceful rise, consistent with international norms, is in all of our interests. But I was thinking the other day of our friend Sandy Berger, who said to me last year, the future of the Asia-Pacific region is still being written. And there are two possibilities. Will it be China-centric or trans-Pacific in nature? And that's what's at stake economically and strategically. And that's why, for many of our TPP partners, the economic benefits of the agreement are matched by the strategic benefits of having the U.S. embedded in the region. Prime Minister Lee of Singapore noted that for the U.S. to engage in the region and to expand its influence and relevance to Asian countries, trade policy has to be a key instrument. Prime Minister Abe of Japan has said that TPP is also about our security. Long-term, its strategic value is awesome, he said. They get it, and the broader region gets it. American leadership through TPP is already having a magnetic effect. There's a growing list of countries expressing interest in potentially joining this platform over time. And stepping back, it's clear that the strategic stakes extend even beyond the Asia-Pacific region. Trade policy is one of our primary tools for revitalizing the open, rules-based order that we've led for over 7 decades. And consider what that order has delivered. It's established lasting peace among states that have twice gone to war and brought the world with them. It's spurred growth and lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty in the last generation. And it's established international principles that have fostered freedom and individual liberty. That order, however, is bending under the strain of seismic shifts and competing alternatives. In recent years, a series of forces, globalization, technology, the rise of emerging economies, have reshaped and continue to reshape the global landscape. And at the same time, some nations are offering alternative visions for trade and investment, including many of those who have benefited most from the open, rules-based system. In those alternative visions, the state is often absent where it should be present, and present where it should be absent. Instead of recognizing that labor and environmental protections are key to achieving balanced and sustainable growth, these alternatives sacrifice long-term interests for short-term gains. Rather than promoting fair competition, they encourage a gaming of the system with excessive and unfair subsidies. Instead of building bridges to unlock humanity's collective potential, they raise national walls to block the flow of data and ideas. How these alternatives play out will have a major impact on tomorrow's global economy, but they will also have a major impact on geopolitics as well. And other countries appreciate this. Witness China's One Belt, One Road initiative, or the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union. This will also have a major impact on the U.S. economy. Consider the alternative path to leading on trade. TPP fails, and the rest of the world moves on. Markets that would have been open to us remain closed, while our competitors eat away at our current position. Rather than launching a race to the top, we find ourselves in a race to the bottom, without strong labor and environmental protections, without disciplines on state-owned enterprises, without rules to keep the internet open and free, without protections for our innovators. How could that alternative be more in the interest of American workers, farmers, ranchers, and businesses than the path represented by TPP? So there's an urgency here that's undeniable. The world isn't simply watching to see whether the U.S. will lead on trade. It's moving forward without us. And the question is whether the U.S. will move forward as well or be left on the sidelines. Delay is costly, both in economic terms and in terms of U.S. global leadership. Why wait and allow thousands of foreign taxes on American exports to persist? Why wait on supporting additional high-paying middle-class jobs here in the United States? Why wait and allow other countries like China to write the rules of the road? As President Obama asked Congress last night, you want to show our strength in this century? Approve this agreement. Give us the tools to enforce it. And I couldn't say that any better. You know, the namesake of this institution once said, the world has a habit of leaving those behind who won't go with it. Through TPP, we can do more than go along with the world. We can lead it. Let's get it done. Thanks very much.
Very good. Awesome. Super. Yes. Well, I don't know about you, but I thought that was sensational and very positive at a time when this town continues to be in its zero-sum mode, and the blame game is perpetuated. I agree that last night was a positive moment, and I hope that spirit continues, certainly in this arena, Mike, and I think it's clearly your intention. I was listening for any reference to Republicans and Democrats in your remarks. I missed it. So just maybe this could be a win for America, my personal view. On that note, first I want to introduce some of the Wilson folks who are here. I've been looking around. Laura Dawson is the director of our Canada Institute, right there. Kent Hughes is a senior scholar and our trade expert, right there. Robert Daly is the director of the Kissinger Institute on China and the U.S. And I also saw Chris Wilson, who's the deputy director of our Mexico Institute. He's hiding under his big beard. There are probably others, but the point is Wilson has turned out in force because this issue is a central priority for us, and we're really happy you're here. You said, why wait? Okay, why wait? Let's talk timing. Mitch McConnell, the majority leader of the U.S. Senate, was here at a coffee with some of our supporters about a month ago, and he said President Obama should not send the trade agreement up to Congress before his term expires, and he said it publicly later, so I don't think I'm revealing classified information. What about Mitch McConnell?
Well, look, trade votes, as you know better than virtually anybody, are difficult. The trade politics are challenging. All we can do on our end, from the perspective of the executive, is keep on moving forward, reaching the agreement, putting it out there in public, working through the requirements of Trade Promotion Authority, working with stakeholders who have questions or concerns about the agreement to address those concerns, to answer their questions, and then to work closely with congressional leadership, including Leader McConnell, on what the most conducive window might be for bringing up the agreement. So we are going to continue to move forward. We're spending a lot of time up on Capitol Hill, small groups, individuals, larger groups, briefing members and addressing their questions. And our expectation is that as we move forward and continue to build support, that when the political environment is such that it's conducive to bring it forward, that we'll work with the leadership to do so.
Well, what about on the House side? I didn't even ask you about that.
Well, I think that really applies to both. Under TPA, we need 50 votes in the Senate. We need a majority in the House. We're working really member by member, office by office, to build the necessary support, and I feel pretty good about where we are.
There is a rumor, this isn't actually verifiable intelligence, that the business community is hanging back and not out in force as it typically would be in favor of TPP. Is that true? And if they're hanging back, why are they hanging back?
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of momentum over the last couple of weeks. Literally last week, I believe Monday, the National Association of Manufacturers came out, Tuesday, the BRT, Wednesday, the Chamber of Commerce, Thursday, the Business Software Alliance and the Semiconductor Industry Association. So I think they've all taken the time that they felt they needed to look at the agreement, analyze it, see how many of their asks were included and how many were not included, because it is, of course, a negotiated agreement. No agreement is absolutely perfect. And to make a judgment whether on balance they think they're better off with it or without it. And I'm, again, comforted by the fact that everywhere we go, and I mentioned I was in the Consumer Electronics Show last week, meeting with small businesses who all see tremendous benefits coming from TPP, both in terms of eliminating tariffs, making customs rules more transparent and easier to navigate, which is so important to small and medium-sized businesses, creating rules for the digital economy for the first time ever in any trade agreement. And I'm convinced as we continue to work with all of those communities that they will mobilize and Congress will get a sense of what's at stake.
Well, a key piece of what you just said was mobilize. I mean, it is hard and painful for a member of Congress. I have the body scars to prove it, to tell, in some cases, labor unions or constituents, I really think the net benefit of a trade agreement, and I didn't vote for all of them, but I voted for most of them, and as I said, I voted for Trade Promotion Authority. The net benefits far outweigh the detriments, and I understand the case in my particular district. Here's the job situation, here's the future. Are they mobilizing around the retail case for each member of Congress who might be able to support this?
They're beginning to do so. And we've been putting out state-by-state analyses of these 18,000 tax cuts, the benefits sector by sector or state by state of the market access provisions. The Department of Agriculture has put out, again, both state by state and commodity by commodity information. And as all of those get digested, I think people will begin to articulate their support for the agreement.
So just to close on this, I mean, the scare is, or the fear is, that that trade is a net job loser. That if we trade with all these folks, all these countries in Asia, American jobs will, the giant sucking sound, to quote Ross Perot in another era, will occur and these jobs will be lost.
Yeah, no, we fundamentally disagree with that. Look, we're already an open economy. Our average applied tariff is 1.4%. We don't use regulations as a disguised barrier to trade. As we grow, we do take imports from the rest of the world. So if through this trade agreement we can disproportionately reduce barriers to other markets, bring down tariffs that are much higher in Japan, Vietnam, Malaysia, et cetera, so that we can get access to those markets, raise standards in those countries so that we have a more level playing field on which we can compete, we're going to increase our exports. Every $1 billion of exports supports 5,000 to 7,000 jobs in the U.S. Those jobs pay 18% more on average than non-export related jobs. So by opening markets, leveling the playing field, we're helping to support more good paying jobs here in the United States, which is exactly what this is all about. Most economists will tell you, and I'm sure some of the Wilson staff are better able to do this than I am, that if you're not at full employment, trade agreements can help both create jobs and migrate people towards higher paying jobs. And if you are at full employment, then it has a positive effect in terms of creating more high paying jobs, or moving people towards more high paying jobs. That's exactly what we expect TPP to do as well.
And just a couple of more questions and we'll go to your questions, so get ready with your brilliant questions. And please, Wilson people, show off how brilliant you are. China. China's not in this agreement. China is a major trading partner of the United States. I, again, voted for many, it was most favored nation status, and then we changed it to regular
PNTR.
permanent
normal trade relations
with China. So China's a major trading partner of ours. China's a major trading partner probably of everyone who will be part of TPP.
Absolutely.
So I'm assuming this is not a zero-sum game here, that if TPP passes, China wins too.
We're working with China, and they have followed TPP very, very closely because they know it'll have an effect on them, an effect on the region when you raise standards in the region around them. We're working with them bilaterally to address a whole array of outstanding issues, whether it's intellectual property rights protection or forced technology transfer, local content requirements, et cetera. And we have channeled their interest into negotiating a bilateral investment treaty, which can have a pretty significant impact, a very significant impact, on the way they manage their economy and help liberalize and help reform their economy, which is in all of our interests. So we're having a very robust discussion with them, and quite constructive, about what it means to have a high standard bilateral investment treaty, what kind of reforms they will have to undertake, and that's a good step forward in our bilateral relationship.
So if this is such a good deal for a huge part of the world, why are most of the candidates running for the President of the United States opposed to it?
I think you're going to have to ask them that question when you get them here. Look, it goes back to what you said in your introduction. Trade really is very difficult politically, and for good reason. People have seen the impact of technology, of globalization, of shifting patterns of production. It's had an impact on U.S. jobs, on U.S. wages. There should be no denying of that. The question is, what do you do about it, since we are an open economy? And you can either sit back and express one's concern about it, or you can be proactive and try and shape the global economy. And through these trade agreements, through TPP, we're shaping globalization. We're leveling the playing field by reducing these barriers to other markets, and we're raising standards, labor standards, environmental standards, intellectual property rights standards. We're creating disciplines on state-owned enterprises for the first time in any trade agreement, disciplines on the digital economy for the first time in any trade agreement. That's how you shape globalization so that it more closely reflects our interests and our values. That's what we can do. And I think for all the reasons I laid out, it's got to be better for American workers who understandably have been concerned about wage stagnation over the last decade or so. It's got to be better to have opportunities to disproportionately get into other markets, sell more exports, produce more here. One of the great things about reducing these barriers to other markets, right now if you face a steep tariff, a 70% tariff on autos into Vietnam. Vietnam's it's 90 million people, it's a fast-growing market, it's an emerging middle class. You either have to move your production to Vietnam to serve that market, or if you can tear down these barriers, you can keep your production here, expand your production here, expand the jobs here, and export products to those markets. That's what this is all about.
Okay, folks, brilliant questions. Laura Dawson.
The next question will be the brilliant question. I'm just the warm-up.
Okay. Wait, hold on 1 minute. Microphone coming, which Michael is going to turn on. I know he is. There you go.
Thank you. Laura Dawson, Canada Institute. Even though the agreement is huge, I'm not sure everybody realizes that most trade agreements are
closer.
incremental and that they are small improvements one after another, and that the TPP is really an exercise in U.S. leadership to take some giant leaps in some new areas. You've talked about state-owned enterprises, we talked about data protection for biologics and currency controls. What do you say to those folks who are saying, now, we wanted those new things, but we didn't get everything we wanted? We're not satisfied with how giant your giant leap was. Well, how do you respond to those criticisms?
Look, I think no agreement, particularly an agreement negotiated with 11 other countries, and sometimes on issues where our own stakeholders domestically are divided on various issues, no agreement is going to satisfy everybody 100% of the time on 100% of the issues. But I think on balance, when we look, whether it's the complete elimination of manufacturing tariffs in these countries, either the elimination or the reduction, significant reduction in agricultural barriers in areas that we have a particular interest, robust services liberalization, the new areas that you mentioned, whether it's currency, digital economy, state-owned enterprises, the first ever disciplines in this area in the context of a trade agreement. These are all significant steps forward. Does this mean that there isn't more that people wanted in each of the areas? Sure. But I think on balance, we have to both compare this agreement to the status quo and this agreement to the alternative. You know, the world isn't going to, it's not the status quo or TPP that is the real choice. It's TPP or what the world is going to look like without TPP going forward, where those alternative models, where walls are going up around digital economies, where countries are pursuing national clouds or national internets, where more subsidies are going into state-owned enterprises, and where state capitalism is playing a bigger and bigger role in a global stage. That's the world that we face, and that has got to be worse for our interests than the path that we laid out on TPP.
In the back, let's see, there are two of you, but yes, you. Okay?
Thank you. Marvin Ott, Senior Scholar, Wilson Center. Put on, rather than your advocacy hat, more your analytical hat. Looking at
They're the same.
I know they are, but I had to say that. Looking at countries like Vietnam and Malaysia, it strikes me that you're portraying an agreement that will make profound and really disruptive changes in countries like that. In Vietnam, taking down very high trade barriers, how profound a change is that? In Malaysia, requiring the dismantling of ethnic preferences that are fundamental to the political system. How subversive is this for countries in the region?
Look, I think it's a very good question. Let me take Vietnam first as an example. And it's been very interesting working with Vietnam through these negotiations, because at every stage, even before they came into TPP, we consulted very closely with them and for an extensive period of time and said, here are the kinds of things that we're going to need as part of a high standard agreement. Are you sure this is the path you want to go down? State enterprise reform, enforceable labor rights, intellectual property rights protection. And at each juncture, sometimes they needed to go back and talk to their political leadership. But they came back and said, yes, this is the direction we want to take our country. We want to be a fast-growing, innovative economy. We want to have a stable labor market that helps attract investment to our country so that we don't have wildcat strikes, but we have a way of really dealing with outstanding labor issues. So at every juncture, we had those conversations, and they came back and said, yes, this is the direction we want to take our country. This wasn't us forcing something on them. It was working together towards a common vision of a high standard agreement that would help set the rules of the road consistently across the region. You mentioned Malaysia. In Malaysia, we also tried to work with some of their important political sensitivities, including their Bumiputra sensitivities. So to help support their efforts to become, as they have set out for themselves as a goal, a developed economy in the next several years, but at the same time try to take into account their political sensitivities around Bhumiputra policies as part of that.
I just add that you have to give them a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
For stepping up and agreeing to massive changes in their own systems. By the way, I notice the great heroine of trade sitting in the middle of the audience. She's going to die, Carla Hills. Carla, welcome back to the Wilson Center, and thank you for all you do for our country and all the help you provide me personally. We're delighted to see you here. I hope Mike is intimidated.
Absolutely.
Hiding out in the
Watchful
front row.
eye.
Question in the back on the aisle.
Hi, Ambassador Froman. Thank you. Ben Hancock from Inside U.S. Trade. You talked about that no agreement is perfect, and you have to look at what are the benefits that you're getting. But you are starting to see some skepticism even from some of the most forceful advocates for this agreement. I'll take the pork industry as an example. They've looked at what Japan has done to try to offset some of the impacts on their pork industry. And they're worried that this might erode some of the benefits they expected. Are you reaching out to talk to Japan on that issue specifically, or on some of the other issues that have been raised?
Look, on all of these issues, we take the concerns of the stakeholder community very seriously and want to make sure we're doing everything we can to, whether it's answering questions or addressing outstanding concerns. As concerns arise, we do pursue them to make sure that the hard-fought market access gains, for example, that we were able to negotiate are able to fully materialize as part of this agreement. So we welcome that input. Again, I think on the whole, the business community has been broadly positive, even if there are particular issues that they'd like us to follow up on, and we're continuing to do that.
In the second row right here, and I did forget to recognize Shihoko Goto, so I'm going to call on you next. She's, again, one of our senior program people at the Wilson Center.
Hi, I'm Melinda St. Louis from Public Citizen. You mentioned the strong environmental standards, and I was wondering how you respond to the fact that people who actually oppose any environmental chapter at all have been praising the TPP. In Cato, they gleefully said the TPP's environmental chapter is weaker than past agreements in almost every way. They were really pleased about that. On the flip side, TransCanada's $15 billion case against the Keystone XL rejection by President Obama has clearly demonstrated ISDS's threat to U.S. environmental protections. Leading environmental organizations are asking why we would empower more fossil fuel companies to be able to mount similar challenges under the TPP for other climate change policies. And then just secondly, on ISDS, why the administration agreed for the first time in a trade agreement for foreign financial firms to have access to the elastic minimum standard of treatment.
Thank you. Will you explain what ISDS means?
Oh, sure. Investor-state dispute settlement. ISDS is empowers foreign corporations to be able to challenge U.S. Standards outside of our courts and private tribunals.
Thank you for your question.
Great. I might give a slightly different definition of ISDS. For example, it allows foreign investors to get the same kinds of rights that we give both domestic and foreign investors in the United States under the Constitution through neutral arbitration that's not biased. Let me answer your three questions. On the environmental chapter, this is the strongest environmental chapter ever. It's got 3 levels of obligations. Enforcing your own laws, which was the set of obligations that existed from sort of that CAFTA period, to taking a series of multilateral environmental agreements and areas of concern and bringing them into the agreement and giving them real teeth, like CITES, the Convention on International Trade.
There's only one this time.
Maybe I can answer my question. The Convention on International Trade and Endangered Species, and giving that real teeth so that through a trade agreement now, through dispute settlement and ultimately the potential application of trade sanctions, we can protect endangered species. It also takes issues that have been raised, whether it's on the marine environment, and port state measures, protection of marine mammals, et cetera. And then we have a conservation chapter, which deals with issues for the first time, like wildlife trafficking It goes on to illegal logging, illegal fishing, the subsidization of overfishing, and it's why a number of environmental groups have said, and environmental experts, whether it's Kathy Sullivan of NOAA or others, have said that this is a significant step forward in terms of our environmental agreement. The first time, take fishing subsidies. This is something that oceans-related groups have been fighting for more than 15 years in the multilateral trading system, and we've been unable to make progress there. And now, for the first time ever, we have an agreement to eliminate subsidies that lead to the overfishing. That's a significant step forward, and it's an important crack in this overall issue. On the Keystone case, all I would say is we are completely confident that the government's decision is consistent with all of our international obligations, including NAFTA. But I would go one step further in the context of what you said about investor-state dispute settlement, and that is through TPP we have added and since NAFTA we've added additional safeguards about the right to regulate, the ability to dismiss frivolous suits and award attorneys' fees, creating transparency around ISDS proceedings so that all the hearings are public and the materials are public, allowing NGOs and labor unions to participate in the proceedings through the filing of amicus briefs, making clear that the burden of proof is completely on the plaintiff to establish all elements of the case, including what it creates a minimum standard of treatment under customary international law, making it clear that a company can't sue simply for disappointed expectations in terms of profits or expectations that the regulatory environment would stay the same. These are all additional safeguards and additional loophole closings and higher standards that we've added to ISDS over the years. And when we look back at ISDS, we've had 50 years of ISDS. There's nothing new in TPP about ISDS. It's been around for 50 years in the international system. We've had it for 30 years in 51 agreements. We've had it in that total of 30 years, 51 agreements. We've had a total of 17 cases brought against the U.S. to date. This is the 18th case. In the 13 cases that have been brought to conclusion, we've never lost a case. And that's because when we regulate and we take executive action, we have to live to a higher standard anyway, which is the Constitution and the Administrative Procedures Act and the relevant statutes. So we feel quite comfortable that our regulators do their jobs in a way that is not discriminatory. And more importantly, the various ISDS tribunals have reinforced that. In terms of your last question, the minimum standard of treatment as it applies to financial services has been in our BITs for a long time, and there's nothing new in it beyond what's in our BITs, our bilateral investment treaties.
Shihoko.
Ambassador Froman, I'd like to go back to the idea of TPP being a catalyst for creative disruption. In countries like Japan, TPP has been seen as an opportunity for introspection, to face challenges and to undergo painful changes, structural changes, so that Japan can be more competitive in the longer term. Now, you talk a lot about TPP being an opportunity for the United States to exert global leadership, and that this is an opportunity for the United States to take the forefront of shaping globalization rules in the future. Is there, though, enough introspection within the United States to use TPP as a catalyst for facing some of its own domestic challenges, for instance, the wealth gap or the educational divide or other issues?
Well, a very good question. And first, let me say that I think Prime Minister Abe's interest in having Japan join TPP, as you suggest, was very much part of an overall strategy, an economic strategy, which included what he called the third arrow of Abenomics, or structural reform, and viewed TPP as helping to spur on structural reform, whether it's in the agrarian sector or other sectors, service sectors. So we hope that this will all certainly be used by Japan to help spur on reforms that it wants to undertake on its own anyway. You know, from the U.S. perspective, I'd say the following. Having seen the globalization and technology development over the last 20 years, our view is that through TPP, we can try and shape the global economy in a way that helps address a number of our economic concerns. And as I mentioned, by reducing barriers to our exports, helping to increase those exports paying higher wages than non-export related jobs, we're dealing with some of the concerns about wage stagnation, about income inequality. And we see that TPP can play a very important role in that.
What percentage of the exporters are smaller businesses?
Well, it's interesting. About 98% of all of our exporters are small businesses, but only a very small percentage of our small businesses export. And those that export tend to export just to one country. And so we see huge opportunity in expanding the ability for small businesses to export. We're about 300,000 U.S. firms that export, and about 275,000 are small and medium-sized businesses.
Front row.
Thank you very much. I'm Carlos dos Santos, the ambassador of Mozambique. You'll probably wonder why I'm not from the US, I'm not from Asia, I'm not from the Pacific.
You're very welcome.
Please.
But this debate interests us a lot, and precisely because of your last remark on not leaving anyone behind in terms of international trade. And we welcome the administration's initiatives towards Africa. I just wanted you to comment whether there will be any impact on other trade agreements that you have reached or facilities that you have agreed to, like Goa and other regions in the world.
Well, we were delighted that Congress renewed GOA last year for 10 years, which is the longest renewal ever. And
The African Growth and Opportunity Act.
thank you. And included some important reforms in that as well. And we're now working with our GOA partners, as you know, to make sure we're doing everything we can for them to be able to take full advantage of AGOA. The first 15 years of AGOA, I think we're quite successful in some respects, but we have a long ways to go for the benefits to be fully realized. And part of what we did in the run-up to the renewal is study what were the other obstacles to AGOA's success. A lot of it has to do with capacity building, to infrastructure, to simplifying rules like rules of origin, and we're going to try and deal with all those issues. Some we dealt with in the AGOA bill, and some we're dealing with through technical assistance and capacity building, through our trade hubs, through the work of USAID and MCC and others. So we'd like to see our AGOA partners take even more advantage of the access that they have to the U.S. market than they have in the past, and we're very much committed to doing that.
Let's see, in the back, there's someone in a blue shirt right in front of the camera, right over there.
Hi, I'm Damon Cook. I'm an intern with the Hudson Institute, though I'm not here in that capacity. How might TPP's fate, whether it passes or fails, affect TTIP negotiations with the EU?
Well, we're continuing our negotiations with the EU on TTIP in parallel. We've made some, I think, significant progress over the last several months in terms of getting it on a more accelerated track of work. And we're having more or less ongoing conversations with them about all the outstanding issues. We're going to try and get it done as soon as we can, consistent with the standards that we see out there. But we don't see, this is really on a parallel track, and we'll be working throughout this year both on the TTIP negotiations and, of course, to get TPP done as soon as possible.
Okay, Kent, wait for the microphone, please.
Kent Hughes here at the Wilson Center. Thanks for a terrific presentation. One of the countries that was not at the table, but its ghost was certainly that's China. And I wondered your views about China now that it's interested in TPP. It's been a close observer. Do you see a period where it might want to join and adopt the high standards you've developed?
I think, you best ask a senior Chinese official rather than myself. What I'd say is there's a long way. TPP is a high standard agreement. I think there is a fair distance between the standards in TPP and where China is at the moment. But that's what we said to our Chinese counterparts is let's focus on the bilateral investment treaty. It is similar in the standards to the investment chapter of TPP, and let's see if China is able to engage in the kind of commitments and reforms necessary to achieve that.
Okay. In the center, in the fourth row. Right? I'm looking at you, yes.
Thank you. Well, Ambassador Froman, European politicians.
Please identify yourself.
Oh, sorry, Jean-François Boitin. For years, European politicians have been talking about shaping globalization. Through TPP, you have done that, so kudos. But I have a question on the elephant in the room, China, and relationship between EU, US, and China. Do you see a risk in the EU and the US taking different positions on the status of China's market economy, or negotiating agreements that would be not as ambitious on the European side, investment agreements with China?
Well, first on the market economy status, we are not encouraging the EU to take any particular position. We have not made any decision ourselves on any particular position. We are having dialogue about how each of us is thinking through the issues, and we're interested in understanding more about the EU's perspective on China's evolution towards becoming a market economy. But Europe has a very different set of laws. They have a different set of institutions, a different set of requirements, and it's completely up to them to decide what it is they do on that issue, as it is for us as well. I think more generally, TTIP had various lines of work or motivations, but certainly one motivation was that if the US and the EU could come together and reach agreement on certain standards, that we could work together vis-a-vis the rest of the world as well, vis-a-vis China and elsewhere, in other fora, to try and help promote those standards as well. I think we have good dialogue with the European Union about the challenges posed by China and other countries, and we hope to continue to build on that through TTIP to see where we can further collaborate, whether it's on dispute settlement or helping to reinforce the enforcement of intellectual property rights or dealing with a number of other issues.
So TPP could be a kind of force multiplier for TTIP, meaning that you're having the conversations anyway, and this perhaps makes the environment more conducive to concluding that negotiation.
I think that's right. I mean, the TPP helps set some high standards across a whole series of issues. TTIP is also intended. Here we have two advanced industrialized economies, high-wage, well-regulated economies who can not only deal with the traditional trade issues, but also talk about where we can bridge differences in our regulatory regimes or in our standards without compromising our health, safety, or environmental protection that we've come to expect in each of our respective economies. And so I think there is an opportunity if we're able to raise standards in TPP, raise standards in TTIP. That's 2/3 of the global economy. And at that point, it becomes easier to also help promote those kinds of high standards more generally in the multilateral trading system.
Wonderful. Front row.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm Solomara from the Fiji Embassy. My question is...
Can you talk into the mic so
Sorry.
everyone can hear you?
My question is related to countries in the Pacific Island region, developing countries, who are outside of these of the TPP, and what impact will the TPP have on our exports into to the US, particularly under GSP, exports that are empowering vulnerable communities and groups like women and youth? Thank you.
Well, again, I was also comforted by Congress's renewal of the GSP program last year, which had lapsed for almost 2 years. And we think it's a very important program for developing countries to take advantage of, to promote their own development and to integrate their economies with the global economy, with our economy. Again, there's an issue of usage. We want to work with our GSP partners to make sure they're fully utilizing the benefits that they have. And I don't know the case particularly of Fiji and its GSP usage, but I think one of the challenges we have with our preference programs is that they're not fully utilized by the intended recipients, and we want to make sure we're doing everything we can, whether it's through information or technical assistance or capacity building, to help promote that.
Way in the back, I think it's, I can't tell, is that, yes, you're standing up.
Thank you. Thanks, Jane. Cindy
Oh, it's
Arnson
Cindy.
with the Latin American program here at the Wilson Center. Thank you. My question is related to the previous one. Some countries in Latin America, such as Colombia, which has an FTA with the U.S., is not part of the TPP. There are Central American countries that are part of CAFTA that see the TPP and the potential competition in textiles as directly detrimental to them. What kinds of measures are being taken to expand the number of people that are part of this treaty and to mitigate the effects on others who already have FTAs with the U.S.?
Sure. Well, first on the first question, TPP is intended to be a platform to which other countries who are able and willing to meet the high standards can potentially join with the consent of all of the TPP parties and consistent with each party's domestic processes. So that, for us, that means consulting with Congress and ultimately Congress's approval. No country will be able to join TPP without Congress's approval. So there'll be an extensive period of consultation with the countries and with Congress about additional adherence to TPP. You know, in terms of some of the issues that have been raised with regard to CAFTA countries, we very much had those in mind as we were negotiating TPP. And if you take, for example, the textile sector, where there's a great deal of supply chain integration between American textile producers and Central American countries, we treated those products as sensitive products with the longest staging possible in terms of tariff reductions and tariff elimination. And we've been working very closely with our own textile producers here who very much value that supply chain relationship, who understand that there are certain things that that can only really be done when you've got that kind of proximity and those kinds of relationships, and we expect that to continue going forward.
In the back, sort of in the middle, you're standing up, sir.
Now, looking at everything that I wear...
Please identify yourself.
My name is Jerry Dunphy, and I'm a guest. Now, looking at everything that I wear, from my shoes right up to this hat, I think everything is made abroad. Everything. Look at me, I'm not too bad dressed. Will the TPP alter this in any way at all?
Well, we're glad you're here.
Well, would you mind giving me your hat, sir? No, it shouldn't alter. You're very well dressed, and it should not it shouldn't alter that at all. You know, clearly we have a significant amount of imports already into our country in the footwear sector, in the apparel sector. As tariffs are eliminated in those sectors over time, and in some products will be sooner than later because some are sensitive, and so some we've stretched out over time. The products you're wearing may well become less expensive, and you may be more plentiful here, but it will not affect your ability to dress as you do. I will say one thing, interestingly, because you are very well dressed. Our tariff system, just anecdotally, is remarkably regressive in many respects. If you wear a fancy pair of handmade leather shoes, you pay something like a 5% tariff on it. But if you buy a pair of sneakers, you pay a 25% tariff. Mm-hmm. And who's buying the sneakers and who's buying the hand-tooled shoes? Same thing, sweaters. If you buy a cashmere sweater, you're paying a relatively low tariff. If you're buying a cotton sweater, something slightly higher. If you're buying an acrylic sweater, even higher. And so when you look at actually how tariff reductions, and we don't often emphasize this in terms of the consumer benefits of trade agreements, but if you think about how tariff elimination will affect low-income consumers, it actually has a disproportionate positive impact given the dispersion of where spending is done.
Thank you.
I'm more concerned about the working man.
Yes.
As are we, and women.
And women. Woman. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
The import is the working man, and of course you say ask the candidates the tremendous unrest in this country.
Yeah.
It's bloody obvious.
Thank you, sir. I think some of the other questions have addressed income inequality also. It is a concern. We have a question from the overflow room. I mean, this is not your entire audience, Mike. And this is from Alana Gorelik of the Cipher Brief. She says, you mentioned the strategic implications and suggested that China welcomes the TPP. What are the potential negative consequences of leaving China out of the deal? What are the security implications?
Well, I would say, again, we are deeply engaged with China in a whole series of avenues and forums, whether it's the Strategic and Economic Dialogue, the Joint Commission on Commerce and Trade, the very frequent bilateral meetings we have from the highest levels of the president on down, with a robust economic agenda. And as I mentioned in my remarks, we need to have a constructive relationship with China, and that means we need to continue to work through our bilateral issues. Again, whether that's intellectual property rights or forced technology localization, some of the concerns we've had about recent policies that have been announced, or investment issues. And those are the issues that we're pursuing in the bilateral relationship. And we think that's an appropriate way of doing that.
And again, I mentioned this notion of our rebalance to Asia, which certainly China is part of Asia. The hope is that increased economic ties of various kinds with all of Asia will increase security in Asia.
Look, TPP isn't directed against any country. It's directed towards setting high standards for the region and embedding the U.S. With its Asian partners in a way that's got broad implications for our mutual economic benefit, but also strategic implications as well.
Well, we have chance for one more question, and I'd also like to give Ambassador Hills a chance to say something if she'd like to. Let's see. Don't be mad at me, but we will. I think
Mac Dessler at the end there.
Okay, Mike, pick the.
How about Mac Dessler? I haven't seen him for a long time.
Thank you, Mike. Let me return the
great trade expert, great trade academic.
Mac Dessler, University of Maryland. Congratulations on this fine talk, but even more for your success in negotiating a rather remarkable agreement. I have a question you may not want to answer. I'll try to put it in a form.
Are you going to regret having me pick you? Is that?
We all know that once agreement is signed and under fast track, the Congress may not amend this, the administration may not change it, et cetera. If we look back at NAFTA, that was of course true, but a number of things were negotiated. Some of them the side agreements by Clinton, some also things like dealing with sugar that were negotiated in addition to basically please certain constituencies and increase the chances of congressional approval. I won't ask you whether you're willing to do that, but I will ask whether you think some of your trading partners are willing to deal at the margin if it proves to be important.
Look, I think this is a fundamentally different kind of agreement than any of the bilateral FTAs that we've negotiated before, whether one party and another party, where we're trading market access for agreement on a set of rules. Here you have 12 countries of varying levels of development. Half the countries we have FTAs with, the other half we don't. So in some countries we're offering the incentives of further market access. In other cases we're not. And here every issue is tied to every other issue, and every country assesses the balance that it struck in the agreement vis-a-vis the balance that other countries struck, even on unrelated issues. And so it's one reason we've said we don't believe this is renegotiable, and where we're focused on making clear to members of Congress and stakeholders what's in the agreement, how we've addressed their concerns, and to continue to talk to them about whether there are any further steps that we can take on our own to do so.
So a final question or comment from Ambassador Hills.
You've both done a spectacular job. This is a terrific program, and my enormous admiration for Ambassador Froman. Not only has he made a great agreement, and it's covered the economic benefits of our workers and our companies, but he's also provided an umbrella for poorer countries like Vietnam that are using this agreement as an umbrella to take on the tough political issues to move toward an open economy with greater freedom and opportunities for others. He has also created an agreement that, like the Marshall Plan, has invested in our future. Because if these 11 other economies grow, they create our market opportunities for the future. So my basic comment, Jane, is I hope everyone in this audience gets up, talks to their congressman about the many advantages that you both have expressed so articulately and get this agreement passed. And I thank you both very much.
Wow. Thank you.
Well, on that note, let me imagine that bipartisanship is breaking out in Washington, at least around trade and at least at the Wilson Center. And thank you very much, Mike, for coming back. We're issuing your badge. You will be back again soon. If there's any other thing you wanted to say, you're welcome to say it. Otherwise, on behalf of all of us, including the geniuses who work at the Wilson Center who are populating this audience, again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for having me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming. Would you please remain in your seats as the ambassador exits the building? We need to have you wait here in the auditorium for just a moment until he can get to the elevator. So thank you. Again, thank you very much for coming. We have people stationed at the doors who will be able to tell you when it's safe to leave. It'll only take a few seconds. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd please remain seated, the ambassador is going to head to the elevator.